Welcome to the Clean Power Hour Live. I'm Tim Montague, your host. Today is August 10th, 2023. We're here in Boulder, Colorado at the ASES Solar 2023 conference with Sean White, our special guest today. Welcome to the show, John Weaver, my commercial solar guy and my co-host.
Hey, Timothy. Thanks for all the hard work you guys are doing to set this up remotely. That's pretty cool that you're in Colorado. Great volumes of solar out there. So, good place to be.
Yeah, for anyone who doesn't know this, Colorado is a real thought leader in the renewable energy industry. It was an early adopter. There's a lot of programs educationally, a lot of organizations. We're here at a conference for ASES, the American Solar Energy Society, but there's also COSA, the Colorado Solar and Storage Association. There's also CRES, the Colorado Renewable Energy Society, I think is the name of that organization. So many storied organizations. ASES dates back to 1954, Sean informed me. Speaking of Sean, welcome to the show, Sean White.
Yeah, thanks a lot, Tim and John, commercial solar guy. It's great to be here with you guys, and great to be in Boulder on a nice sunny day with not too much atmosphere in the way of the solar arrays here. So we're maybe peaking out at over 1,000 watts per square meter today, which is pretty exciting.
I really like it. Sorry, I'm going to interrupt you. I really love anybody whose conversation basis starts with the watts per meter squared, because that means you're a proper solar professional. So, Sean, there we go.
That's what it's all about. You know what kind of blew my mind is that we had the governor speaking. Governor Polis was here 2 days ago, giving a little bit of a talk, and he said solar module. I never heard of a actual real politician saying the word solar module, because they're always saying solar panels. So this guy's educated.
We got him.
This is a great solar place. I love being here. Yeah. Nice rocky mountains. I'm looking at a rocky mountain right now. So.
And you guys are now nearby the soon-to-be Meyer Burger solar cell facility that's just going to be south of where you guys are in Colorado City, I believe. I think is where it's going to be. Old Intel facility, if there's a Colorado City. But we just been watching, and you're also really close to Golden, Colorado, of course, which is the home of NREL. So it's you're just in one of the most beautiful places on earth, man. Good job.
Yeah, Tim has a booth right next to the NREL booth, and so it's pretty cool to see all the NREL stuff coming on. And we had actually a really awesome speaker named Peter Green, and I think he's the deputy director for NREL, and he was giving out all these great statistics about how fast the solar industry is growing and when we're going to get up to 100% renewables, and things about like how it would be great if we had transmission lines all the way across the country, but we don't. So that'll require more nuclear power, according to the way that he looks at things. But I want to look. Apparently, all of these ASES talks are posted online, or will be posted online if they aren't already. It's in the process. And then I'm going to go back and I'm going to watch that one and learn some neat stuff from all the smartest people in the world at NREL.
I agree.
Mm-hmm. And that's the National Renewable Energy Labs. In fact, I believe it's right now, I think there's a tour to NREL for people at the conference, so they can go check it out. I've been there a couple of times doing, it's like pre-COVID, doing some National Electrical Code writing workshops, where we come up with new things for the code. So it was kind of fun to see this really fancy $1 billion lab, which is probably more of $1 billion. And it was put together originally by Jimmy Carter. We got to say his name while he's still around. And Jimmy Carter called it the Solar Energy Research Institute. And then the guy who was after him, I can't remember his name, just kidding, but he kind of changed it around a little bit and took away some of the funding and changed it to NREL, which is fine with me. That's a nice acronym, National Renewable Energy Lab. They got PV watts, all that good stuff over there.
Yeah, we're very lucky to have NREL. If you're not familiar with NREL, check it out, National Renewable Energy Laboratory. One of the cool things I learned is that they're not actually part of the DOE. They are a subcontractor. So it's a semi-private institution. I always thought it was part of the DOE, but it is not.
That's something new.
Did you know that, Sean?
I didn't know that.
No.
I know it's got a .gov after it, so it's
Yeah.
got some kind of.
Yeah, they pretend to be part of the government, but they're not.
They're
So
not. I'd like to get myself a .gov then. Maybe we could do cleanpowerhour.gov. Get that out
Yes.
there.
the governor.
Uh, we had one of those over there over in California, behind the California Solar Initiative. Muscling in all this renewable energy.
So I want to talk about the myths of the energy transition today with you, Sean, because you're so knowledgeable about solar and storage, and as John and I are as well. But one of the myths is that we don't have enough precious materials like copper or silver or lithium to make enough solar panels, wind turbines, and batteries to clean the grid and decarbonize the economy. And even I run into energy professionals, clean energy professionals, who have heard this myth so many times that they've incorporated it into their story. And it's just plain wrong. We have credible evidence. And Chris Nelder has broken this down on his podcast, The Energy Transition Show. If you're not familiar with that, check that out, energytransitionshow.com. Wonderful podcast. It is behind a paywall, but you can listen to the first 20 minutes of all those episodes for free. And it's, I don't know, it's like $6 a month. So it's a very reasonable fee to join Chris's podcast. But what do you gentlemen have to say when you hear that criticism that we just aren't going to have enough stuff here on planet Earth to make the clean energy transition?
I know that some people out there listen to Rush Limbaugh, and you can get your information from one source or you can get your information from another source. And according to some of these people, even like a solar module will never pay for itself. I've heard that one, and it's like a solar module will never make as much energy as it took to make it, and that might be true if you don't ever use the solar module, or it's like on some call box where nobody uses it, something like that. But for the solar that we're doing, where we have a terawatt of it in the world, it takes, I don't know, maybe about a year to make the energy that it took to make a solar system or a solar module, depending on your sources and all that kind of stuff. And so these systems, they're going to go for a long time. A lot of people are worried about recycling. And if you want to know where to recycle your solar modules, just give them to me, because I'll go put them up and I'll put another 30 years on them. And then somebody else could do that after that. I have solar modules that have been working since the 80s, the good old Arco solar modules that were out of the Carrizo Plains, which is now a really big solar place too. I think I flew over it the other day. We have tons of solar there. And so it's another thing another hobby of mine is geopolitics. And so listening to how everything works. And there's this guy that I kind of like listening to. His name's Peter Zion, and he's actually out of Colorado. He's out there like doing some hike. And then he makes these crazy statements that sound like he got his information from Rush Limbaugh, saying that solar is never going to make the energy that it took to make it, or something like that. And it kind of just throws me off. So if you wanted to, get the exact data of what it's going to be, you can look to NREL. Lithium, there's tons of lithium in the world. We're not going to run out of lithium, and lithium is what you make lithium ion batteries. Most of what's going on in a lithium ion battery is what we're using. We're not using like lithium metal batteries with a lithium metal anode. It's just lithium ions. It's more nickel than lithium. Maybe they should call them a nickel battery. And if you want to get a bunch of nickels, just like melt a bunch of nickels, In fact, I've heard that you can, if you melted $1 million worth of nickels, like our 5-cent coin, you get $2 million for $1 million worth of nickels. So that's an idea for somebody who is good at melting things, like like some of our ancestors did, melting metal and all that stuff. So I believe that you have something like in the ground, the lithium reserves, something like enough to get 10 billion Nissan Leafs, and that's plenty. And then after that, what you can do is you can go into the sea. Like there's lithium in seawater. There's tons of lithium. It's the third element on the periodic table. It's the lightest metal. And, first in the beginning, there was hydrogen, then there was helium, and then there was lithium. And that's the version of the Old Testament that I read. And so that was right after the Big Bang. I make some jokes that sometimes people don't think I'm funny, so I
We like
apologize in
those.
advance.
We like those types of
Uh,
jokes on the Clean Power Hour. Come
uh,
on, we love.
okay.
You know, my biggest response when people say, "Hey, we're not going to have enough," is that before I was born, people were saying we'd run out of oil in the 70s. Then after I was born, they were saying we'd run out of oils in the 80s and the 90s and the aughts and the teens.
Right.
And my personal opinion is that we will never run out of oil for the same reason of that other phrase, which I really like. The Stone Age didn't end due to lack of stones. It was advanced technology that left the stones in the ground. And we're probably going to have oil seeping up out of the ground for the rest of human existence that we will soon see as valueless, because we're going to come up with new technologies which will leave this archaic burning of goods in the ground. And like Sean said, lithium is, the third most, maybe still the third most abundant item in the universe. It's very reactive, so who knows how much is left. But we also don't even have to worry about lithium necessarily. There's now sodium batteries, there's flow batteries, there's recycling of these batteries. The batteries are so valuable that they don't go to get recycled, or they don't go to the garbage, because people are literally bidding on old car batteries. They're worth so much. So I lean towards Sean's answer of we're not going to run out of stuff. We got plenty. And if we ever get to the point where we've manufactured so much of the Earth's surface, we're probably, and this is where we start getting into our fun stuff, Tim, we're probably going to be mining asteroids in space and doing 3D robotic printing or something cool like that, because we have grown so much as a species. So we got plenty of goods.
So I found the reference. It's episode 194 of the Energy Transition Show. It's called Materials Requirements of the Transition. And he has a guest on the show called Zeke Hausfather, Haus Father. And Zeke and company wrote an article called Future Demands for Electricity Generation, Materials under Different Climate Mitigation Scenarios, published in Joule, Volume 7, January 27th, 2023. He also references Dave Roberts' article, in Canary Media, February 4, 2023, What You Need to Know About Minerals and the Clean Energy Transition. And so these dudes analyzed 17 key elements for clean energy generation materials and concluded that, woe and behold, we have plenty. So, and Joule is a legit peer-reviewed scientific journal, very credible, and there's a bunch of other references there on this landing page. So just check that out. And I love this myth, but it has been completely debunked. So if you're an energy professional, or a clean energy professional, much less, do not let this myth come out of your mouth, because it is not true. There's a couple other myths, though, that we need to address here, gentlemen. And you have already referred to one of those, and that is the fossil fuel myth. There's a myth that we can't make the energy transition without fossil fuels. And, as Sean was talking about, a solar panel, for example, pays for itself energetically in a couple of years. And in fact, we now have the technology to make solar panels with pure electricity from photons from the sun. So what do you gents have to say about this myth about the need for fossil fuels in order to run a clean economy?
I was thinking about taking one step back too, because John got me all excited when he mentioned the Stone Age, and we're in Boulder, and I really like the stones. I was inspired by the.
There are lots of rocks here.
And then so you look at those stones, and what are they made out of? Silicon and oxygen and a couple other elements like that. Some iron in there for the lithium iron batteries, lithium iron phosphate, LFP, and so all we really need to do is to refine that silicon, is to get our DC arc furnaces from PV, that we get out of these stones from the Stone Age that we're still in, maybe, and we could say, and then we vaporize the rock with those DC arcs, just like they can do with coal power, and then we are making solar modules, and we could do that here on Earth. We could do it on the moon, and there's a lot of talk actually in the space community about doing stuff on the moon. You know, if we get there, because it's made out of the same thing as the Earth is made out of. Second most abundant element in the Earth's crust is silicon, and so that's just pretty much a stone that's coming out of there. But yeah, heck
After what? Iron?
Oxygen, actually, the stuff we breathe. So oxygen's very reactive and it oxidizes things, and silicon's very reactive too. So pure silicon doesn't exist on Earth until we refine it, and then we get it to be 7 nines pure. That's 99.99999% pure silicon, and then that makes computer chips, that makes solar cells, and it's super abundant. We have plenty. We could cover the Earth many times over with solar cells. So that would look sort of like the Death Star, though, not too pleasant. I'd rather go hiking in Boulder. You know?
Well, that is my concern, that we're going to create an AI that wants to go intergalactic, and it's just going to cover the Earth in solar cells, and then we won't have any food or drink. But John, what do you say about fossil fuels and their need relative to running a society on wind, solar, and batteries?
Well, we do need them for the transition because we need energy for the transition. However, once the transition occurs, we probably won't need them for energy's purpose. We could use them as a great backup source during the late transition for, say, low capacity factor peaker plants is one item where we use gas plants in their current status, where they are only used from like 3 to 10% of the year, and in places like Minnesota or Tim, where you are in the great North Central, where there can be some doldrums during the winter time when solar is low before we say winter size our solar. So in the late transition, we probably will still need gas. But then after that, we're not going to need it. There's multiple layers where we could remove these high risk moments. We could do transmission. If we do transmission, we fix a whole bunch. However, we might only do a third of the transmission we need, or half of it, or we might not do, say in the US, a national HVDC network. If we don't do that, then guess what's going to come in? Batteries. And we're going to be inefficient relative to transmission, but we can manufacture batteries because we are expert manufacturers as a species. And it'd be unfortunate if we do this many batteries, but I feel like it'll win and it'll still work. You know, each place has plenty of sun, plenty of wind. I've seen analyses that said we have enough land surrounding every large population center to do solar to meet their basic needs. So if we're forced, because we choose, and that's a choose word, we choose not to do HVDC, then we'll figure it out with batteries. And we might still use oil, though. I mean, oil is a useful material. We make tons and tons of things of it, but we just might not burn it. And we can make the manufacture of products from oil emission-free by capturing it, or, sometimes when the oil breaks down, it keeps the material in there and the CO2 in there. So I just don't think from an energy standpoint we're going to need it. It's going away.
The critique that I heard recently that really irked me was, well, look, even the back sheet on a solar panel is made of plastic. And that is true, that today, for a monofacial solar panel, the back sheets are often made of plastic.
Yeah,
but tomorrow, we're going to use glass on glass. And glass on glass is taking the industry by storm. And all solar panels are going to be bifacial within a couple of years, I predict. Yeah, and even some of those major manufacturers are moving away from monofacial completely, right?
Mm-hmm. So we had Peter Green, from the deputy director of NREL here, and he had some pretty neat terms. I remember one of them was the inverter grid, but another one was he was talking about electrons to molecules. And so they can take hydrogen, which you can make with electrolysis, and you can turn that into all kinds of different petrochemicals by combining it with CO2, taking CO2 out of the atmosphere. You can make airplane fuel, you can make plastic, and so you can make back sheets. So you can do the whole thing. And I think that we could get along just fine without having any gas. If I was just in Alaska, I used to live there, and there's all these people living out there for 20 years, and most of them just figured out how to do it themselves, and they live off of pure solar energy, and they have some wind turbines up there to get them through December and stuff like that. So it's totally possible. I mean, if these people can do it with that old technology, I kind of one time I like kind of ran some numbers and tried to figure it out. Like, what does it take? How for one person? Like 10 kilowatts, 20 kilowatts of PV, something like that. So what if everybody in the world installed 20 kilowatts? How long does it take a person to install 20 kilowatts? What if the whole world took 6 months or a year off and just and then did the transition? That would be kind of the equivalent of what it would take. And so I'm kind of the opinion that, yeah, humans are smart. We came up with people like Einstein, and we could figure this thing out. We could engineer it out. It just takes the will, and no problem. We got it.
So
That's a very good point, Sean, that we can just make artificial, so to speak, right, plastics from CO2 directly capturing it from the atmosphere.
Well, this comment that you just brought onto the screen, Tim.
Christopher Sylvia, thank you for the comment. That's one of my favorite responses as well. Let's save it, right?
And with that response, though, my response with that is, I don't really care if we use oil for stuff. The oil in and of itself isn't bad. Burning of oil and its emissions going into the atmosphere causing the greenhouse effect is the issue. Oil in and of itself, whatever. It's toxic to touch and all kinds of stuff, so you don't want to like bathe in it. But oil isn't bad. It's the burning of oil. So if somebody says, John, your backsheet's made from plastic, I'm like, yeah, who cares? You're missing the point, my friend. Pay attention to the real game. It's not about oil, it's not about gas, it's about releasing it into the atmosphere. So if we take some plastic, or we take some oil and we throw it through the plastic machines and it outputs plastic, great. As long as we did that work using electricity that's clean, and we didn't allow the emissions from the oil breaking down to escape. That's what matters. So yeah, Tim, if we have glass bifacial modules, great. We don't have to worry about the back sheet, but we still got junction boxes that are probably made out of plastic. We still got copper wires that had an outer UV protective layer that's made out of plastic. Wonderful. Make it. Do it. Like Christopher said, just don't waste it burning it. Use this oil for something useful. Medical supplies, whatever. So those people are just missing the argument. They're not even in the same playing field. We got to recognize that sometimes.
So the other criticism or the other myth that I want to talk about is that we don't have the time, money, or manpower or human power to make the energy transition and achieve a net zero economy. I will point our listeners to peterfikowski.com. Okay, Peter is a scientist, an engineer, and a serial entrepreneur. He's an AI scientist and an AI entrepreneur, trained astrophysicist. He has a wonderful book called Climate Restoration. Peter's going to be coming on the show in the next month or so. And the website is Peter Fikowski, FIEKOWSKY.com. And what he did is a first principles analysis. So he made a huge list of all the potential solutions to the climate crisis. How do we take carbon out of the economy and then suck it out of the atmosphere? Because there's 1 trillion tons of CO2 pollution in the atmosphere from industrialization. And he concluded that there are 4 simple solutions, and the price tag is only $1 billion a year. Now we have a $20 trillion economy, and Elon Musk, his personal wealth is something like $200 billion. So one billionaire, amongst us, and there's now, I think, over a dozen billionaires on Earth, could completely
Are you
solve...
counting me? Are you counting me?
I hope so.
Doesn't, Tim, hundreds. There's hundreds. I think we're like 400 billionaires. There's
wow.
hundreds of billionaires, yeah.
So what do you gents have to say to this myth that we don't have the time, money, or talent, basically, to make the energy transition?
Yeah, $1 billion a year sounds pretty cheap to offset that. But one of the this morning I was on LinkedIn and somebody had a picture of like waves in the ocean that were plastic, like you couldn't see the water, you could just see the plastic. It was somewhere down in South America, and so we got to take that carbon that's in the plastic or wherever it is, could even be wood chips, and stick it down in those oil wells back where we took it out from. where we stole it from the dinosaurs, from the dinosaur burials. I'm just kidding, it's mostly plants. But that's, what are we going to do with that CO2? It's just plain old chemistry. Humans are smart. We just got to do that chemistry and put that CO2 someplace besides the atmosphere. And so CO2 could be like anything like, carbon-based life, wood, biomass, whatever, and make it so it doesn't go back into the air. So like we look at the back sheet of the PV module. If we don't let it go back into the air, that's great. We don't want it to go into the ocean. Burying it, will somehow it seep out, or decomposing it? What will happen with that? Those are all things that we can solve.
Yeah, I mean that just seems like somebody's thrown up every single argument they want, Tim. We don't have enough time. Well, you know what? If we don't do it, we're gonna die. So there's that. We don't have enough money. Well, I mean, I saw a document the other day from the World Bank that says we have $100 trillion global GDP. I've seen numbers saying it might cost like $60 trillion to completely upgrade the global system. So are you saying that we have enough money that we could make it in like Q1, 2, and 3, and then have some left over, like an extra $15 trillion in Q3, and then Q4 is all for Christmas presents? We got money. Talent? Listen, Tim, we have you, we have Sean. That's all we need. We're good now.
And the commercial solar guy. Yep.
And the commercial solar guy. And then, and people, so all of that is just somebody just throwing spitballs at the wall, Tim. We built a global, we can manufacture so much stuff. We're like so good at it that it's bad for us. We've now gone from people saying, oh, you guys will never be able to make enough solar panels, to you guys are making too many solar panels. And same thing's about to happen with batteries. I mean, we're in the same curve, downward in price, upward in capacity. These are boring people. Don't hang out with them anymore, Tim.
So the element of this myth that I am concerned about is that we don't have enough talent. And I, on some level, concur, right? We do need hundreds of thousands more people to come into the energy transition. They're coming, and Sean is helping them with his NABCEP training. We need 1 million electricians, for example. That's just here in the United States. So if you're listening to this and you're casting about for a career, run to the trades and run as fast as you can, because these are well-paid jobs. And you can, get started today with a high school education. You don't need to go to college. Now, if you want to go to college, that's great too, and become an engineer or part of the finance team or part of the sales team or the marketing or project management, etc. But we do need to get serious about bringing our young folks, and I'm talking starting in middle school, into the energy transition, because a 12-year-old becomes a 22-year-old in just a decade. And here we are in 2023, so in 2033, right, we need to build that. And I'm curious what you gents have to say about the talent pool for the energy transition.
I mean, we do have something called low unemployment, which kind of means a labor shortage, so it gets a little bit tough. And then we have lots of anti-immigrant sentiment. We have also, it's kind of natural for, if you were the only electrician in the world, to keep it that way, because you could charge $1 billion an hour, But we need to do things so we can get more people into these careers as fast as we can. And so, like, one thing that I try to tell people to just kind of inspire them is, like, do you want $1 million? Because this is how to get $1 million. You can get $1 million by being an electrician. So is that $100,000 a year for 10 years? Is it $50,000 a year for 20 years? It depends on where you live, and then you have higher cost of living where it's $100,000 a year, but it's totally doable. And so these people just have to do it, and it could be all kinds of, there's just every kind of career that you can think of. I forget exactly what year it was, but also, once again, the guy, Peter Green from NREL, was giving some numbers. I think it was something like 25% of people are going to be in renewable energy jobs coming up, or was it Larry Sherwood? But he's another guy. He's the president of IREC. can't remember which guy did the talk. But there's so many jobs, whatever job you have, even if you don't know you're dealing with renewable energy, the UPS driver. I was just answering somebody's question on my class today as a UPS driver taking my solar class on at Heat Spring, and I was saying, you know what, you've already worked in the solar industry because you probably delivered some MC connectors to a job site. You might not even have known it.
Right.
So there's just all kinds of jobs and careers out there. If people want to get into the industry and they don't know where to start, they should probably start off with doing something like the NABCEP associate exam, and by the time they've finished that, take a little class, and then it takes about equivalent of a week's time for the average person, and they can pass the associate exam, and then they'll know where to go to next and how to adopt their career if they're in finance or whatever. I mean, I imagine the three of us, just we're not 20 in our 20s. We've probably had previous careers, and so that so many people can adapt what they were doing to the renewable energy. And then this is also a time in the world where it's the first time where doing the right thing is doing the thing that makes you the most money. So before, people were doing all kinds of bad, evil stuff to make the most money. And now you want to make the most money, you got to get into renewable energy. That's where it's at. You're going fossil fuels, that industry's dying out if you didn't know it.
So Sean, I saw that same stat that you saw recently within the last couple of days. 25 to 30 to 33% of all jobs that are coming in like the next 10 years or 20 or something like that will be in the advanced energy, renewable energy world. I think, we're putting out bids right now for projects that are larger than 1 megawatt AC. And that's a grid connection, 1 megawatt. And these projects we have, and I'm still learning how to do this art, but in these projects within our Gantt chart, as we're developing our bids, our labor costs are now double what they were. And I'm ecstatic about the opportunity to pay people prevailing wage and even to bring in the union guys now, because we can afford them in our projects and our customers will pay it because they want the 30% tax credit from the IRA. And so I gotta tell whoever decided to put that thing into the IRA, yeah, it was scary at first to think that, oh my gosh, I'm gonna have to pay people 70, 80, 90 bucks an hour to sling some solar modules. But now I'm kind of happy about it in reality because we're gonna get good people who are gonna earn some good money, and we're gonna take care of them. And that makes me feel like a real business owner, that I'm really taking care of my employees and the people working for me. And so I think that we're going to have a massive volume of electricians and installation crews, mechanical installation crews, who are going to be very well paid and very highly motivated to give their time to the solar industry. And that's our million people. We got 340 million in the US. That means we need less than 1/3 of 1% to fully kit out the solar industry just in the US. I've heard there's like 10 million people in solar globally, or 3 to 10 or 5 to 10. We'll get there. We just got to pay them and be patient. We're growing.
Another wonderful resource for our listeners is a book by Eric Posse, a fellow solar professional up in Minnesota. He wrote a book called Clean Wave. And Eric does a kind of soup to nuts analysis of all the opportunities in solar, wind, and energy storage. And so if you're looking for a career, it's a great overview of all the different types of careers that you could have. So check out Clean Wave. I interviewed him on the Solar Podcast, the previous version of this show, when I was at Continental Energy Solutions. So you can catch that on YouTube, on the Continental YouTube channel. So in our last few minutes together here, I'm curious, Sean, you're here giving some NABCEP training on solar batteries and the NEC. What is keeping you up at night, Sean, in terms of the energy transition? Or are you very chill about the whole thing and you think everything is going to go swimmingly?
Yeah, I mean, what keeps me up at night is, well, I try to go to bed early and get up real early. There's too much work. I mean, you talk to anybody, like it's hard to refer somebody to somebody, to get solar on their roof. I get people, asking me like, who should I get to do this? And the people that are doing it are so backed up that they can't take on the work, or they promise and then they're 2 years later it gets installed. I mean, you hear that story all the time. Another thing is just there's some of these people out there, selling solar that totally don't understand solar. So if people are going to buy solar, I recommend them to buy it from somebody that maybe has the NAPCET PV technical sales certification. It takes Tim Montague and Sean White's classes at Heat Spring on PV technical sales to get certified. But we don't want to get a bad reputation. But I see that there's so much work. Have you ever met anybody, or at least recently in the solar industry, that's not too busy? Everybody's got too much work. One way is that people sometimes compensate with that is to raise their rates. There's just lots of money in this industry now, especially due to the incredible Renewable Act. That's the IRA, otherwise known as the Inflation Reduction Act. But it's the best thing ever that ever happened for solar. And it's also really good for manufacturing, bringing manufacturing back to the US. One of the things that I hate seeing is people that are getting abused, to say it nicely, in different countries for doing work in the solar industry, and then us and other people in Australia and all over the place using solar modules that if I said what I think it is, like what we used to have, when you make somebody work for free, I would probably get canceled. So I'm not going to say that right now, but it's terrible. Some of the ways that things are being made, and bring it back to the U.S. There's just tons of jobs. It's growing like crazy. And if you're not already in the industry, we need your help. And if you are in the industry, be one of those people that jumps up, use your brain. A lot of people start off installing, but you want to go beyond installing and start using your brain so you can work in an air-conditioned office where the air conditioning is powered by solar PV, wind, and those electrons are kind of evened out on the grid with energy storage.
Yeah, I loved Peter Green's comment or slide, showing that the IRA has doubled the amount of solar and wind that we're going to install by 2030. And that is what good government is for, is leaning into these big transitions that society goes through. And yes, it's a combination of government and private industry. We all work in private industry, but it's a both and. And the Biden administration has done very right by the current and future generations of Americans. We see the sheer volume of factories. This is battery factories, EV factories, solar panel factories that are now planned and under construction is just mind-boggling. And that means high-paying jobs. It means much easier access to these materials, right? We don't want to ship them across the Pacific Ocean if we don't have to. Right now, China makes 70% of all the solar modules in the world. And we can change that, but we have to get serious about that, and we have to incentivize companies to prop up factories in the U.S. I guess that's a question. Are we going to have enough factory workers to make all those solar panels? That's one of the things that I am concerned about. And that's where immigrants come in. We have 300 plus million Americans, but we are a country of immigrants, and to be anti-immigrant is to be anti-American, in my opinion. We are built on and stand on the shoulders of being an immigrant nation, and we should welcome more capable, willing workers to this country from other places.
Yeah, I totally agree with you.
Oh.
No. Yeah, and we have robot technology and stuff, but we also have demographics. The baby boomers are retiring, so it's like, and that's like the biggest generation ever, and so we need replacement for that. And it's wages are high. People running a business are freaking out because they have to pay so much money for employees and things like that. And so and if you look at people like you mentioned, Elon Musk, he's an immigrant too. We want to bring all the smartest people in the world to be over here working for us and creating jobs. And I have a lot of friends that do stuff like that that are
It
from different countries.
it really pains me that we have such a wonderful educational system, right? And we're training millions of students from Asia and Europe, and then sending them home, right? And I'm saying let's train them here, give them a good degree in engineering, and retain them, and make them citizens of the United States, not send them back. That brain drain is very painful.
Yeah, and I see that. I live near Silicon Valley, and my girlfriend's in tech, and she was born in a different country and top of her class, and now she's over here and just got she's got U.S. citizenship. She's been here most of her life. Um, and I wanted to say one more thing because earlier I was beating up on oil companies really bad. What companies are better in a better position to make this transition happen? So let's not call them oil companies. Let's call them energy companies. And instead of building these big old oil rigs out in the ocean, let's make big old wind turbines out in the ocean. Instead of distilling fossil fuels, they're going to be putting together hydrogen and carbon dioxide and making other types of fuels that came from CO2 in the air and hydrogen from H2O. And so we just need to retool everything, and everything's there in place. And so it's going to happen. So we still need those energy companies. They just have to transition away from oil. They're not bad people. I've done a lot of work for them. They're in a lot of my classes too.
All right. Well, we've got just a couple minutes left. I want to thank you, Sean White, for joining us today here in Boulder, Colorado. I want to talk about upcoming events. We have RE Plus happening in Vegas. All of us will be there. Hope you are too, listeners. Join us in Vegas, September 11 to 14 in Las Vegas. In October, I'll be going to MNCA up in the Twin Cities. And then in November, I'll be going to Houston to Energy Storage North America, a Reuters event. I'm going to be moderating a Shark Tank on energy storage. So excited for those events. What are you guys looking forward to on your calendar?
Wow, I guess I'd have to look it up. I get to go home for 2 weeks. I've been I think it'll be 5 weeks that I've not been home for more than a couple of days. And then I'm going to be catching up on my 2023 National Electrical Code videos for HeatSpring. And then after that, I think I have a class for a community college in New Jersey. And then on to more things like that. Of course, you said RE Plus. There's going to be InterSolar in January. There's going to be Tennessee. And then you can find out if you go to Solar Sean, that's solarsean.com on the homepage there. I have something set up for the Philippines, probably going back to Washington, D.C. to work for Grid Alternatives. It's totally awesome. And I was there last week. And I don't know, there's
Since
too
you
much
mentioned Grid
business
Alternatives,
right now.
Sean, why don't you tell our listeners a little bit about Grid Alternatives?
Yeah.
So speaking of Jimmy Carter, he is affiliated with Habitat for Humanity, and the Habitat for Humanity for solar is Grid Alternatives. And in fact, they even have a picture of Jimmy Carter working on a Grid Alternatives job. And so they do solar for low-income people. I do a training that's based on a grant in Washington, D.C. for low-income people. They work with tribes and things like that. They actually administer some programs for the state of California for like multiple affordable housing. So people that live in apartments and things like that can get solar, which is kind of a big deal. So they're totally awesome. They have 10 different offices. You can sign up to 10 different offices throughout the United States, and you could go to the gridalternatives.org. And if you're in the right area, you can sign up to do some solar installing, just like people do Habitat for Humanity. You could do Grid Alternative solar installs. And so that's how a lot of people get their hands-on experience. I'm recommending them all the time. And they are, it's hard to say my favorite nonprofit because I'm actually on the board of a nonprofit myself, but they're my favorite nonprofit. ASES is a nonprofit too. They're my other favorite nonprofit. They're and they all work together, and they're just totally awesome. They have like great energy, great people. Anybody that's ever worked at Grid Alternatives, I love them. So,
What about you, John?
I think my favorite thing in Vegas, because it's Vegas this year for RE Plus. Commercial solar guy is growing as a company, and as we're growing, I'm starting to be able to actually talk to some of these vendors better, and so it's going to be about walking the floor as always, and just listening to people in a different way. So in a way that my company actually can use them. And so I think for me, it's going back to the basic beauty of the show, walking the floor, seeing what's available, meeting some salespeople that you can learn, have a handshake with, so that when you follow up in 6 months, you have a face with them, because it's the best, easiest way to meet buyers and sellers of hardware, or sellers of hardware and services, because it's hard to find hardware. It's hard to find this, it's hard to find that, and it takes time. And if you got a nice long list and you got a collection of business cards, which I rarely use, but if you have this list, it just helps. And so I've been thinking about this next one, and I'll be there with PV Magazine, writing some articles, walking the floor, but I'll be really paying attention this year to people who are making stuff, so I can shake some hands and know some folks.
And for our listeners who are technology companies and manufacturers, or other types of energy companies, what are you looking for in a story? What types of stories do you like to cover?
We cover. My goal when I write stuff for PV Magazine USA is to find articles that really educate our readers and that have new data and new information. I'm not looking to just cover a press release unless the project has some knowledge I can share with our readers. And because my goal is, number one, is to teach myself so that I learn, and also it's also to teach everybody who's reading and everybody who's paying attention. PV Magazine readers are very high percentage professionals, people like Sean, people like you, Tim, people who know solar, who are looking for knowledge. And so if somebody has a piece of hardware that's coming out and they have a good feature set, send it to us. If they finished a great project and they want to show off how they financed it, or the fact that they're a good construction firm, send us the project with some images, with some documentation on the finance tools. If you're, say, a developer and you're looking for certain types of projects, tell us what the projects you want, and then tell us some projects you've already signed and found that kind of fit within your niche. I want to put documents out that aren't just, entertaining reading articles. We're here to do business. So give us some meat so that we can educate our people, so we can link back to your website, so we can talk about like real solar knowledge, educational stuff. If you guys look at my Twitter account, it's really boring. I don't make any jokes. I don't do anything cool. I don't say anything funny. I just talk about solar. I talk about agrivoltaics. I talk about modules. I talk about batteries. I talk about EVs. And I specifically go for the meat of the articles, the stats, the hardware, the cost, the capacity. I know this sounds really mean to all the well-meaning PR people and the executives, but to be honest, most of the quotes that you folks put in your PR articles are fluff, and we're not interested in fluff. Give us some math, give us some data, give us some hardware, give us some gear that we can build, we can sell to our customers and show off. That's what I want.
So check out John's website, commercialsolarguy.com. Of course, you can find him on PV Magazine as well. And Sean White can be found at solarsean.com, unless there's a better website for you, Sean.
That's a good one, solarsean.com or heatspring.com. You can find my classes there too.
Excellent. And then all of our content is at cleanpowerhour.com. We're dropping a pre-recorded interview every Tuesday and this live on Thursdays, which also then goes on to our YouTube and audio channels on Fridays. So please check out cleanpowerhour.com. Give us a rating and a review on Apple and Spotify. And most importantly, tell your friends about the show. We are growing the energy transition one podcast, one news roundup at a time. We'll be back next week, Thursdays at noon Eastern, most Thursdays of the year. So thank you all for being here. We do this for you. I'm Tim Montague. Let's grow solar and storage. Take care, John and John.
Let's grow.